The portion of Chaya Sarah deals with the important purchase of a gravesite for Abraham and Sarah, specifically at that point for Sarah, and also for the very important match that was made between Rebekah and Isaac, Abraham's son, and the family of Laban and Bethuel, and ultimately Eliezer as the master shadchan, marriage agent, marriage broker. But I would like to skip a little bit, raise a very important textual problem, and solve it with a number of important verses in the portion of Chaya Sarah. Rebekah is a most suitable wife for Isaac. She is the embodiment of loving kindness. Eliezer saw it within her, and therefore he made the marriage deal. But from a certain perspective, the marital relationship, which is discussed later on in the Bible, between Isaac and Rebekah, seems to have been far from perfect. Because if you remember, Rebekah favored her son Jacob, Isaac favored his son Esau. Who was to get the blessing? That was the question between both parents. And Rebekah deceives Isaac. The wife deceives the husband. The wife urges the younger son, Jacob, to pose as Esau and to deceive his father. Why didn't she just explain her position to her husband? That she felt that Jacob was the more worthy son to receive the legacy and birthright. Why must she stoop to deception? Why not have an honest conversation with your husband? After all, the Bible will tell us that Esau spurned the birthright. Esau even marries 2 Canaanite wives. Esau is certainly not worthy, and she could explain this to her husband very carefully. And of course, even very lovingly. Why deceive him? Let's go back to the time that the marriage deal was made. And Rebekah says to Lavan and Bethuel, her father and her brother, she is indeed willing to marry Abraham's son. And they set forth to arrange for the wedding. Eliezer, the servant, the faithful servant, the brilliant servant, and Rebekah. And then the Bible describes the scene. Eliezer and Rebekah are walking in the desert. Chapter 24 of the book of Genesis, verses 61 following. And Rebekah and her maidens were riding on the camels. And just at that point, verse 63, Isaac went out from having been meditating in the fields. Isaac was right there, close by. And he was meditating in the fields or having a conversation in the fields, lasuach basadeh. He was talking to God. Lifnot arev, before sunset, before evening, at the time of sunset. The most magnificent time of the day, magnificent colors of the day. of a setting sun. And he was praying. Vayisha, and Isaac lifts up his eyes, and he sees camels are coming, a caravan. And Rebekah, on her part, lifts up her eyes as well, and she sees Isaac. And the verse reads, she falls from the camel. And she says to the servant, who is that special personage who is walking in the field towards us? And the servant replies, he is my master. He is your betrothed. She suspected this. That's why apparently she fell from the camel. You must understand that Laban and Bethuel are scoundrels. Laban is a great deceiver, and he spends much of his time deceiving Jacob in later life. Rebekah had never seen a true religious personality before. She respected goodness. She was the soul of goodness herself. But she had never seen a homo religiosus on whom the divine presence rested after he actually had a conversation with God in the fields. And when she suspected that this was her betrothed, she fell off the camel. She felt totally unworthy. And when her suspicion is corroborated, he is my master, says Eliezer. Vatikach atzaif vatitkas. She took her veil and she covered her face. The Netziv, the Rosh Yeshiva of Volozhin, Rav Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin says, Rebekah covered her face because she felt unworthy in the presence of such a great religious persona. And the Netziv suggests in his commentary, Hamek Davar, that throughout her life, Rebekah always felt a bit unworthy in the presence of Isaac. It's interesting that Eli Wiesel calls Isaac, after the Akedah, the first survivor. After all, he almost died a sacrificial death. So Isaac wasn't able to use the necessary small talk to make Rebekah feel more at ease with him. And the Netziv suggests that they really couldn't communicate with each other completely openly. Rebekah never saw him as an equal, but rather as certainly a religious superior. Therefore, she never had the conversation with him. The only way she could convince him was by deceiving him for a time and making him come to the realization himself that if Jacob really needed to use the hands of Esau to get what he truly deserved and what was rightfully his, he would be able to do it. That's why the conversation never took place. Shabbat Shalom.